Cancer is caused by food.
Really?
70%.
70% of cancer is caused by food.
And sugar is the #1 culprit.
People that are maybe eating a not so healthy diet, people that are overweight, if they do have depression, that there very well could be a link between the diet, the lifestyle, the obesity.
Have olive oil, vitamin D, have lots of vitamin D. D3.
D3.
And then what's next to live a long life?
We don't always know about the foods we put in our body, how they affect us in a negative way. But this video has the top health experts in the world to teach you how to prevent yourself from destroying your health.
Have olive oil, vitamin D, have lots of vitamin D. D3. And then what's next to live a long life?
Next is you got to get some form of long chain omega-3 fat, better known as fish oil. And vegans have no excuse anymore. There is algae-based DHA and EPA. But here's the deal. Your brain is about 70% fat. So if you want to call me a fathead, you know, I will bat you.
Yeah.
And I can just see now the internet lighting up. Gundry is a fathead. So half of the fat in your brain is actually an omega-3 fat called DHA. So basically half of your brain is fish oil.
Wow.
And as I talk about in the longevity paradox, you look at people what are called the omega-3 index, which basically looks at how much DHA you have in you over the past 2 months. People with the highest omega-3 index have the largest brains and the largest areas of memory, the hippocampus. People with the lowest levels of DHA have the most shrunken brains and the smallest memory areas, hippocampus. So Mom was right when she said fish is brain food. You know, she didn't know why it was, but we now know it's DHA is really what makes your brain.
So sushi's good.
Sushi is actually not a good idea.
Oh, wow.
Most of the people I see with high mercury levels are sushi eaters or dentists. And particularly sashimi grade tuna.
God, it's so good,
you just kind of want to stay away from it.
Oh, sugarfish is amazing, though.
Yeah, tono.
And it's got the grains, too.
Yeah, it's got the grains, you know, so
no sushi.
Yeah, so
once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. But, yeah, so fish oil is incredibly important.
Yeah.
And what I try to get people to do, and again, I measure this every 3 months in all my patients, and we're talking, you know, thousands and thousands of patients over the last 20 years. You want to get about 1,000 milligrams of DHA per day. Now, how do you do that? Well, you get fish oil. I mean, you can go to Costco. I don't care.
Right.
And you look on the back, and you find serving size, and make sure it says 1 serving size. They love to fool you. They may say 2 or 3. And then you look down below, and you see DHA. And you look to see how much DHA is in a capsule. And you add it up and say, oh, okay, there's 250 milligrams of DHA in this capsule, so I need to take 4.
Wow. 4 a day.
Yeah,
or 1,000 a day.
however.
1,000 a day. Yeah.
1,000 a day of DHA.
We got olive oil. We got vitamin D3. We have fish oils. What else do we need to live longer?
So you got to have polyphenols in your diet. So what the heck is a polyphenol? How do you remember polyphenol? Think about polywanaphenol.
Okay.
Phenols are plant compounds. Polyphenols are plant compounds that plants use primarily to protect themselves against stress and sunlight. Just interesting fact. We know that red wine is beneficial for you because of actually 2 polyphenols. The most famous is resveratrol. The other one is quercetin or quercetin. The higher the grapes are grown, the higher in altitude the grapes are grown, the more polyphenols they make.
Because they need more to protect themselves.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's basically suntan. You know, they've actually protected themselves against sunburn.
Interesting.
Also, the more the plant is stressed, the more polyphenols it makes to protect itself.
Right.
Okay? So polyphenols are traditionally in dark-colored berries. So, for instance, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. interesting fun fact, the leaves of these trees or vines have more polyphenols than the actual fruit does. So, for instance, black raspberry leaves have far more polyphenols than black raspberries.
Wow.
And I take black raspberry capsules, oh, by the way, and it's in the book.
There you go.
So olives, for instance, are loaded with polyphenols, and olives that are stressed produce are even better.
Wow.
Olive leaves have more polyphenols than olives. So olive leaf extract is an easy way of getting the huge amount of benefits without drinking a liter of olive oil.
So what about like, you know, leafy greens? Do you want stressed out looking leafy greens, or do you want healthy, thriving looking?
Excellent question. It turns out that the reason organic vegetables in general are better for you, besides the fact that they haven't been sprayed with pesticides and herbicides and probably Roundup, and we can get into that, is the fact that these creatures, these plants, actually have to work harder, and they have to produce more polyphenols to protect themselves against insect predation. And so that's actually the reason you want to eat organic. So when you're going to the farmer's market and the poor little organic vegetables have got potholes of insects,
like they're dying,
and they don't look very good, you go, I want that guy.
Really?
That guy is struggling. He is going to just be so loaded with polyphenol.
Really?
And correlation with that is the more bitter, the better, because polyphenols in general are very bitter. For instance, when we were developing, you know, my signature product, Vital Reds, it's pure polyphenols primarily, and they're bitter. So we did lots of taste testing to figure out how the heck we're going to mask these really bitter compounds. So more bitter, more better. In fact, as I talk about in the book, I had the pleasure of knowing Jack LaLanne, who you would know is really the godfather of fitness and nutrition in the United States. And I knew him in his later years. And Jack used to have a saying is that if it tastes good, spit it out.
Interesting.
Now, what he really meant by that is bitter things, nasty tasting things, is actually what is going to give the bugs that are actually going to keep you alive what they want to eat. And don't, you know, more bitter, more better. So, you know, the more polyphenols, the more bitter greens I can get into you, the better.
Interesting. But you can get that through capsules and other things too. You don't.
Yeah,
have to,
you can. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I'm a nut about taking a bunch of supplements, because if you look at even, you know, really good organic eaters, most human beings only eat maybe 20 different plant species.
I probably eat like 3.
Yeah, most people do.
Like 5 maybe.
Yeah, and ketchup is not a vegetable. It's a tomato, and we can't do that. So our ancestors, and even looking at modern hunter-gatherers like the Hansa tribe, they eat 250 different plant species on a rotating basis. And you think about it, all those plants are grown organically. They're in 6 feet of loam soil. They got their cool microbiome. So they're just replete with all these nutrients and polyphenols. And so, you know, if people think that they can actually do a great job eating healthy without supplementation, I got oceanfront property in Palm Springs. I'm happy to sell them.
We're talking about the brain and food connection. Right now in the world, it seems like mental health and depression is a hot topic. It's something a lot of people are talking about. They're having mental health challenges, depression challenges. And I'm sure there's many factors to this: social media, comparison, bad foods, a lack of exercise, a lack of sleep, anxiety, up all night, environment, lack of purpose, there's a lot of social factors probably that tie into mental health challenges. How important is food by itself and relating to minimizing depression, social anxiety, and mental health?
I think food is extremely important because it's directly linked to obesity, and obesity itself causes low-grade inflammation. And foods that are really high, particularly when you combine a high saturated fat with a high refined sugar. So let's say you're drinking your glass of milk with your cookie. Like that's the worst because you're getting the saturated fat and the sugar.
That's my whole childhood.
And that's been shown to cause a very high, what's called postprandial inflammatory response. So we've been talking about postprandial glucose response, which is after you eat. So postprandial. There's a inflammatory response that also occurs after eating, and inflammation itself has been shown to inflammatory molecules cross the blood-brain barrier, and they play a role in basically depressing dopamine signaling and serotonin and all sorts of affecting neurotransmitters and brain function. And there's been studies directly showing that if you inject a person with an inflammatory cytokine, it causes depressive symptoms versus
Really?
injected with saline. Yes.
So the more inflammation we have in the body, it increases depression.
Exactly. Inflammation. We used to think, again, the brain was separate from the body and that, the immune system and all that didn't affect the brain. Turns out that was all wrong. Absolutely wrong. And these inflammatory mediators do get into the brain, and they get into the brain and they change, they're changing the firing of certain neurotransmitters and things like that. They're also activating the resident immune cells in the brain called microglia, astrocytes, microglia, a type of astrocyte. And, that also is linked to depression. And we put out a little short video on this, on an animated video actually, on inflammation and depression, and talk about a lot of the studies because it's something I don't think people realize, that the food you eat, and not only the food you eat, your lifestyle, being obese and overweight, being sedentary, exercise is one of the best anti-inflammatory medicines you can get, period. And it also happens to be one of the best lifestyle remedies for depression as well. And I mean, randomized controlled trials showing that, all sorts of evidence. So
is this any type of exercise, or are you a HIIT training, a cardio, a 30 minutes, 60 minutes? What's your opinion?
Well, there's been studies looking at, I would say the large body of evidence seems to show aerobic exercise is really important with respect to depression. And that is because aerobic exercise leads to increases in what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF as it's called. It's basically a growth factor that's produced. You can, after just 20 minutes of a moderate intensity workout, you can increase your level. You can find levels increase by like up to 30% in plasma. It crosses into the brain, and in the brain, it does a lot of things. Not only does it do what IGF-1 does, it actually grows new neurons. It helps you grow new neurons, and it helps your neurons survive. So it plays an important role in preventing brain aging. But something else very unique that it does, it plays a role in what's called neuroplasticity. Yeah. Neuroplasticity is like your brain's ability to adapt to stressful conditions. I mean, this is what children can do pretty good. As you get older, neuroplasticity goes down, as does everything. But neuroplasticity is important for being able to cope with stress, like the stress of a pandemic, for example. More neuroplasticity helps with those stressful divorce people are going through, or losing your job. Lots of stressful things, but neuroplasticity helps the brain cope with that. And brain-derived neurotrophic factor helps increase neuroplasticity, which decreases with age. So, again, aerobic exercise was important, but there's been studies linking strength training to lower depression rates as well.
Yeah, any type of exercise will help.
Exactly, I do, but I really think that aerobic, there is a place for aerobic with respect to the BDNF, the brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
I always tell people that every day I try to put myself through some type of physical pain that makes me feel discomfort, whether that's sweating for 10 minutes or a 2-hour workout or playing basketball, hiking, whatever. I try to put my mind and body through something where I'm like, gosh, I don't want to do this. But by putting myself through pain, controlled pain, it sets me up to be more under control when there is chaos and pain. Right. And I think that's the key we should get to, is like controlled pain, healthy pain, so that you're not out of control when there is chaos and pain in the world.
What you're describing, scientists often refer to as hormesis, and that is basically a little bit of stress on the body, like exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, because our body tries to maintain what's called homeostasis, a little bit of stress will cause our body to respond to that stress with a lot of anti-stress,
Right.
anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, growing new brain cells, all these beneficial things. So
wow,
a little bit of stress gives you a lot of good stuff, right?
Interesting.
Whereas low grade chronic stress all the time, it doesn't do anything. You're not getting that. You're not getting that powerful.
Okay. Yeah,
response.
This is amazing. I'm going to say something that I hope I don't offend anyone when I say it. That I am all about self-love, self-care, loving yourself for who you are, accepting yourself for where you're at in your life, physically, emotionally, environment, financially, all that. The more I hear you talk about this, the quote unquote self-love movement of accept who you are and accept where you're at with your body and what you eat, and it's okay to eat whatever you want, just love yourself for who you are, is that self-love mentality, that specific type of mentality, killing people and hurting them if they aren't willing to adapt no, it's not okay to continue to eat whatever you want all the time and just love yourself and accept yourself for who you are. You have to make sure you arm your body and your mind and your health with the nutrients, the tools, the exercise in order to decrease depression and increase happiness.
I think that there's absolutely, if you're going to just eat what you want and accept being obese, that you'll be causing yourself more harm, and both physically and mentally. And that also probably affects your loved ones as well, you know, that care about you, or perhaps that you're interacting with and you're in a terrible mood. And so, you know, when your neighbor's happy, you're happy, right? You know, so I think that there's part of this movement. I think there's a fine balance between you don't want to have your expectations so high that you can never be happy.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm never going to look perfect, and someone's always skinnier than me, and I'm
never going to have blue eyes. I'm never, you know, so if I'm always like, well, only people with blue eyes are the prettiest, like, then I'll never be happy. So like, that's an unreasonable expectation, right? In my mind. So, I mean, there are things where, you know, like I'm never going to be a billionaire. And if that's all I wanted in life to be happy, I'll never be happy. So there are things I think that you can, there's a certain balance between, I mean, you want your expectations to be high in a way. You want to always aim for what you know, aim for the stars in a way, and try to like work hard to get there. So what I'm trying to say is I think that self-love movement came from somewhere, right? I think there was something to that, right? But I think it sort of spiraled out of control, and what's happened now is you're saying, well, accept things that I don't want to change rather than you can, because you can change that. You can lose weight. You can eat different foods and get healthier.
Make different decisions.
People that are eating refined sugar, people that are drinking these sugar sweetened beverages, you know, and there's a lot of people, maybe not so many people listening to the podcast or watching it, but there are people that do. And, you know, there's been studies that have shown refined sugar acts on the reward pathway in the brain, dopamine pathway, in a very similar manner to controlled substances, drugs like nicotine,
yes,
methamphetamine,
yep.
Not to the same degree, but they're acting on the same systems, and it
increases a feel-good hormone when you take it for the moment, but then it makes you decline afterwards and crash, right?
It does. And you know, I think the important point to realize with that is that when you take that away, when you stop, what happens is there is a withdrawal. And it's been shown, at least with, for example, with nicotine studies, that your dopamine's getting constantly fired. And so your what's called dopamine receptors, which basically the dopamine acts on to make you feel good, those start to decrease because your neurons are going, oh, well, I have so much of this around, I don't need so many of the receptors. So when you take away that thing that's causing the dopamine all the time to go away, you have fewer receptors, and now you don't feel as much. I mean, it's just really bad. You're not feeling any amount of dopamine, right? But it's been shown that sort of normalizes within 3 months. And 3 months is a long time, but it's actually not that long.
Of cutting out the sugar, you mean? Of like
Well,
cutting.
this has been shown with nicotine. I'm just drawing a parallel.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I'm drawing a parallel saying, look, it's not going to be easy the first month.
It's
not going to be easy
so
the first
hard. It's so
It's not
hard.
going to be easy the first month. It may not be easy the second month, but it's going to get easier. And it's not only is it going to get easier, you're going to be happier.
Your body's going to regulate itself. The hormones are going to regulate, right? Things are going to self-regulate.
Things start to get back to normal. Exactly.
It's very challenging, but it's necessary to get healthier and happier, right?
It is. I don't think people realize that, depression, it's not just a genetic disorder. It's not just something that can't be fixed ever. No, in some cases, there are definitely genetic cases of depression. I'm not saying that that's not the case.
But can you heal depression through food and nutrition and exercise?
Well, there have been studies that have shown that exercise can be a treatment for depression. And there have been studies that shown changing someone's diet can also improve depressive scores. And particularly the combined two is even more robust, which makes sense. So there's something for people to realize, people that are maybe eating a not so healthy diet, people that are overweight, definitely obese. And if they do have depression, that there very well could be a link between the diet, the lifestyle, the obesity. Fat cells itself, they also they produce inflammatory cytokines. So independent of the whole eating the diet and the postprandial inflammatory response, just having fat, like particularly visceral fat, around your organs and stuff, like this stuff is causing low-grade inflammation. And do you know what low-grade inflammation is? It means that you're basically activating your immune cells a little bit all the time. And activated immune cells require a ton of energy. So you're taking energy away from your brain. From
defending itself, yeah.
From just having, having a great day, energy.
So just having energy.
It's like a sink. Exactly. Just having energy. It's a sink. Low-grade inflammation. You were telling me this, we were chatting a little bit earlier about how you were eating this terrible diet back when you were doing your arena football, and you were always tired.
Always tired.
Low-grade inflammation, it's an energy sink because it requires so much energy to activate your immune cells. And there's only so much energy. It's like a triage, right? It's triaging there.
It's taking it somewhere else. And it takes you away from your mission, from your vision of your life, from your career, from your energy with your family, your friends.
Yeah, you have to have energy. It takes motivation to want to go to the gym. It takes motivation also to want to do stuff or to talk to people, Is there a genetic thing or DNA thing that holds someone back from losing that weight if they've tried for years? Or is this still, they're just lacking the discipline? What is that? There's absolutely many genes that regulate obesity. And I'll just tell you, my mother-in-law, she is also not obese. She's, has in the past had an overweight problem and has tried. She's the kind of person that tries and goes all in, and she has tried every diet, just everything, and just nothing seemed to work. So
how does someone like that, if they've tried, and it's just like, you know what, I'm beating myself up, the diets I'm trying, the exercise is not working, what do they need to shift?
Well, so you asked about genetics, and there is a really important role for genetics as well. But I think that in order to know that, you're going to have to measure biomarkers in your blood. So you're going to have to measure lipids like your LDL cholesterol, different particle sizes of those cholesterol, inflammatory biomarkers like high sensitivity reactive protein, your triglycerides, your HbA1c, which is a long-term measure of your long-term blood glucose levels. Measure those things. And also you can get a genetic test. There's a variety of genetic testing services out there, 23andMe, Ancestry DNA. I do have a genetic report that basically we look exclusively or looking at genes that are basically interacting with diet. So people that are eating a high protein diet, some people with a certain SNP, which is one change in one nucleotide of DNA in a gene, basically can gain more weight. And the opposite is true, like I mentioned, or eating the ratio of saturated fat to polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fat. So saturated fats found in foods like dairy, red meat, fatty cuts of red meat, polyunsaturated fats found in fish, monounsaturated fat is found in olive oil, olives, nuts. So these things, like even the ratio of those things can affect, depending on someone's genetics, their ability to gain or lose weight.
But can
and more so, like even people, there's some people have it where they eat a high carbohydrate diet and they gain more weight.
So so it's not as simple as what I'm hearing you say as just eat less calories a day and you should lose weight.
Not always.
If you suppress the calorie intake, you're going to burn more, and eventually you're going to burn,
I think that's the one thing that's pretty tried and true, is that your caloric restriction, most of the time people will, lose weight.
Lose weight. Gotcha.
They will.
Okay.
But, the question is, how sustainable is that? So you maybe what you would need to do, the other thing is that a lot of times obesity, there's a dysregulation in hormones. Hormones like insulin, leptin is another big one. Yeah. And you have to reset those hormones in order to have a normal biology. Yes. And sometimes resetting those hormones takes a reset that's kind of a strong stressor, like a long fast, where you're basically resetting those things. And that's what did it for my mother-in-law. So that was my long story.
She did a long fast and helped reset.
A couple of them. So she did. Now, by the way, when I say a long fast, typically intermittent fasting is anything less than 48 hours. A longer fast would be longer than 48 hours.
3
than 2 days.
plus days.
Yeah. No, she did, the first time she did a 3-day. She started out by doing sort of a caloric restriction, low calorie diet, just to kind of get her into it. And then she did a 3-day fast where she didn't eat anything, a little bit of salt. She would take a little bit of salt in and drink some water. And then she did 4 days. And she did this separated by a month. And that reset her metabolism. And all of a sudden she started losing weight.
Wow.
And this has also been the case for a few other friends of mine, particularly one that was morbidly obese, and he lost 180 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me again the stat on diabetes, how many people have it or are pre-diabetic, and what, I'm uneducated on this, so how many different types of diabetes are there, and how is it caused?
Okay. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Pancreas fails. We used to be called juvenile diabetes, and you need insulin. You need insulin.
If you have type 1 diabetes, you need insulin.
You need insulin, yeah. Because your pancreas dies. Because your pancreas makes insulin and helps your blood sugar get balanced. That's the blood. It's sort of the gatekeeper that lets the glucose into your cells. Okay. So it's really important.
So how does that die?
How do people die from that?
I mean, how does the pancreas die?
Oh, well,
how does it get to that point?
It's an autoimmune, like you get multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis. It's basically your body attacks your pancreas.
Is that from eating a lot of bad foods?
Well, there's been links to dairy, and actually as a driver of type 1 diabetes. Gluten, 29% of people who have type 1 diabetes have celiac that are undiagnosed. So celiac is a big cause of autoimmune diseases, including type 1 diabetes. So that's a very small number of people, very few. 1 out of 2 Americans have what we call type 2 diabetes. We used to call it adult onset, except now kids as young as 3 are getting type 2 diabetes from drinking soda from the crib. I mean, Louis,
my gosh.
I was working when I was a resident in an urgent care center, and this woman comes in for back pain, and she got her baby in a carriage, and I see her feeding this baby this brown liquid in a bottle, who's 7 months old, and I'm like, what is
soda?
I'm like, what is that? She said, that's Coca-Cola.
No.
I said, why are you feeding your baby Coke? She said, well, he likes it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, listen, my wife showed me this video on social media the other day. It was of a baby, it looked like it was maybe 8 or 9 months old baby, having ice cream for the first time.
Oh.
Having sugar for the first time. And you watch the baby eat the ice cream.
I'll light up.
The eyes, and then the baby grabs the thing and stuffs it in his face. I was like, oh my God, it was just so crazy. And it's highly addictive. So so now we're seeing 1 in 2 Americans suffer from either pre-diabetes
or type 2
diabetes. And that is when you eat too much sugar and starch. And every time you do that, it raises your insulin. Your body becomes resistant to the insulin, and so it doesn't work as well, so you need more insulin. And insulin does what? Insulin makes you hungry, it makes you store belly fat, it locks the fat in the fat cells, and it slows your metabolism. It's like a quadruple threat for your body to gain weight. So it's why we're seeing, and that goes back to what we're growing, right? So why are we eating all this food? It's because that's the food we produce. right? And so that's the other part of the problem. So we have the chronic disease, we have the economic impact, and then we're like, well, why do we have this food? So as a functional medicine doctor, I'm always asking why, right? Well, why are my patients sick?
Because it makes money, right?
Well, no, yeah, but I'm going even further. Why I got interested in this? Because why would a doctor care about agriculture and soil and all this crap? Because as I was thinking about my patients' diseases, most of them were caused by food and can be cured by food. So I'm thinking, well, if it's
how many are most of them? Is this like 50%, 70%? 80% of anyone that comes into the hospital or your patients who has some type of disease or some type of sickness.
I mean, unless it's like an environmental thing like mercury or Lyme or mold, you know, most of the things.
Cancer.
Cancer is caused by food.
Really?
70%.
70% of cancer is caused by food. And
sugar is the #1 culprit. Heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, heart disease, the big killers
are by sugar and food.
Yes. Yes.
So if you change your diet, you should be able to prevent
or cure sometimes.
Sometimes cure. Depends how far along things are, I guess.
Yeah.
But you can prevent heart disease, Alzheimer's.
100%. Yes, 100%. I mean, the studies are there.
It's crazy.
Even people who already have Alzheimer's, when they improve their diet, they can wake up and
more
get
functionality back.
So you've got me thinking, okay, well, if the patient's disease are caused by food, what's causing the food? It's the food system. And I'm like, well, what's causing the food system? It's our food policies. Like, what's causing our food policies? It's the food industry that's lobbying Congress.
It's got money.
It's the biggest lobby group in Congress is agriculture and food. By far, like by twice as much as the next lobby group.
By like gas and oil or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's like, what? So then I began thinking, well, if I'm going to help my patients, I can't do it in my office. Like I can, it's like I'm like in the boat, bailing the boat with a hole instead of plugging the hole.
Right. You're not going to the source.
Right. So then I'm thinking, okay, well, what do I need to do as a functional medicine doctor? I need to go to the root cause, right? The root cause and why. And then it became clear to me that it's our agricultural system that's driving so much of the problem. And what we grow has been based on good intentions that were in the 50s and people were hungry. There wasn't enough food. There was a lot of poverty. And so we figured out a system to produce an abundance of starchy calories.
So we can have food.
So we can have food. And we were great at it. And we have cheap, abundant corn and wheat and soy, which are the commodity crops that are turned into industrial processed food, which is now 60% of our diet. And for every 10% of that you eat, your risk of death goes up by 14%.
Shut up.
Yeah, so you're
crazy.
So you're basically, you know, feeding Americans a diet we know is going to kill them. The research is so clear on this. There's no scientific debate, and yet we don't do anything about it because we have these dysfunctional food policies. And then the way we grow the food causes climate change. And we'll get into that, but the #1 cause of climate change is our food system.
Really?
People don't realize that. I didn't know it. I'm like, oh, it's oil and gas and all this stuff. I'm like,
but what is it? Is it the trucking? Is it the animal feces?
End to end.
Is it
okay, so first of all, deforestation is devastating. Not only do we like destroy the soil on which we cut down the trees, but the trees are carbon sinks, so we lose that.
So they're not sucking in the bad air.
They're sucking
and putting
in
out
carbon
good
dioxide, right? I mean, basically, plants suck out carbon dioxide. That's what they breathe. We breathe oxygen; they breathe carbon dioxide. So that's a perfect antidote, right? Yeah. And then the soil also we're damaging by the way we're farming. We've lost 1/3 of our topsoil. It's responsible, and people don't know this, but of all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the loss of soil, organic matter, like healthy, rich soil, is responsible for 30 to 40% of all greenhouse gases currently in the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution.
Does that mean, why is that? Does it like
why?
suck up? Does it suck?
Because soil it can hold more carbon than is in the atmosphere right now. There's 1 trillion tons of carbon in the atmosphere, which is a lot. I don't know, 1 trillion tons, I don't even know how to measure that. And the soil can hold 3 trillion tons of carbon. And how does it do that? It's an ancient carbon capture technology that is available all over the world, that's free that's can be more effective than all the rainforests on the planet, than all the forests and trees on the planet. It's called photosynthesis. And if you have like grasslands, for example, like we had big prairies in the United States, they suck down carbon, they breathe it, and they put it through the plants into the roots, feeds the mycorrhizal fungi, which then make healthy soil, feeds the bacteria, and you get this incredibly rich live soil that holds tremendous amounts of organic matter that is carbon, right? I mean, carbohydrates comes from the word carbon, which comes from carbon dioxide.
Wow.
Right? Ding, ding, ding. It all connects. And,
Interesting.
and so we've lost.
So if we don't have the soil for it to consume, then it just bounces off back into the air, I guess, and we're just consuming it in other ways.
Yeah, and the soil can hold so much carbon. The UN estimated that if we took the 5 million hectares of degraded farmland around the world, if we took just 2 million of that and spent 300 billion, which is the total military spend for 60 days around the world, which is not much. Yeah. 60 days, 2 months of everybody's military spending. We literally could stall climate change by 20 years.
Wow. Because
of putting back the carbon in the soil. And not only that, it holds water. You see, you know, in Iowa and in the Midwest, there was floods that just destroyed 1 million acres of cropland that otherwise could have been fine if the soil could hold the water, but it just sits on the top where it runs through, and we lose all this water. So that when you have organic matter in the soil, it holds 27,000 gallons for every 1% organic matter in the soil per acre. So it's an incredible water sink, it's a carbon sink, and we've lost all these soils, and it's because we're growing these commodity crops in ways that destroy soil. We're tilling the soil, we're turning over soil erosion, it runs off into the rivers. We kill all the life in the organic matter by poisoning it with fertilizer, with pesticides, with glyphosate, herbicides, and it's staggering. And then we have all these sort of unintended consequences. You know, we started growing all this food, and we thought this agricultural revolution was great. All these chemicals are great. You know, fertilizer's great. We can do all this good stuff. Tractors, big farms, more food, feed the world. It's backfired on us, and it's producing the worst food on the planet. That's causing devastating environmental damage, staggering climate change. So it's the soil loss, it's, you said, deforestation, it's the factory farming of animals, which should be banned. It's the transportation, storage, refrigeration, and the food waste. I mean, food waste in...
A lot of waste.
Yeah, but, well, we waste 40% of our food. We really
That's on our plate, we don't eat it.
Imagine going to the grocery store, buying a bunch of groceries, and getting home and throwing 40% in the garbage. The average Americans waste $1,800 of food a year, and it's about a pound a day, and that goes to landfills. The landfills, then it rots and creates methane. So you could be a vegan throwing out your food waste and scraps, and you could be contributing to climate change. If food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases after the US and China.
Wow.
Yeah, it's methane to produce, and we need to compost, we need to have community garden, like always to fix it. But it's like when you look at the whole end-to-end food system, it is the #1 source of climate change, about 50% of greenhouse gases. And people just don't appreciate that.
So why, I mean, if this information is public and it's out there and policy makers are aware of it, they're not aware of it.
No, I spent 2 hours on a sailboat this summer with a senator, a smart senator.
He wasn't aware of it.
And I literally, his jaw was hanging open the entire time.
Are they not presented with this research and information?
No,
because they got so much money sent to them by the lobbyists, probably.
Right. I mean, listen, if all the people who are walking in their office are Monsanto and Cargill and McDonald's and Pepsi and they're all donating millions of dollars, I would say billions of dollars, they're not hearing the other side of the science. And how do you fight that? So I always deride at lobbyists, but I plan on I'm creating a food fix campaign, which is a nonprofit, along with an advocacy organization, to start to literally lobby senators, congressmen, key people in the administration around these issues and start to drive policy change.
Because in the UK, and you were talking about, I think in Australia, New Zealand, or I think in Asia, you were saying that you can't do certain things with the food, otherwise you'll go to prison, you'll go to, you'll get killed, I mean, like in the UK, they don't have a lot of these dyes, and, right?
Yeah, so it's so funny, the FDA, is so influenced by the food industry, and I was once with the former head of the Federal Drug Administration, Food and Drug Administration, Peggy Hammer. Former. She was, but then she was the FDA commissioner. But now she's former. And I was at the World Economic Forum. I said, Peggy, how come we have so much trouble with getting advances in food labeling, or dealing with toxic chemicals in our food, or antibiotics in animal feed, or she's like, well, when we try to make too aggressive change, Congress threatens to shut down our funding because of the food lobby.
They threaten to shut it down?
Yeah.
And then what? If they shut it down, what would happen?
Well, they're limited in their ability to do their job. And so the FTC, the same thing happened. In the 70s, there was a movement by the Federal Trade Commission to have, negative education campaigns around sugar and how bad it was. But the Congress says, we're going to pull all your funding and shut you down if you do this. And so they pull back. So for example, you asked a question about Asia. We have this thing called GRAS, which is generally recognized as safe. So the food additives. We have thousands of food additives. Only about 5% have actually been tested for safety.
In the U.S.
Some of them are grandfathered in, right? Like so Crisco, for example, trans fat was grandfathered in as a safe food to eat. But it took 50 years for researchers to finally prove to the FDA that it wasn't safe because it was the basis of all processed food, right? Crisco shortening, it shortens your life. That's like shortening.
Oh my gosh.
And so they literally had to be sued by a scientist in order to actually turn it into a non-safe substance. And then, of course, they gave the food industry years and years to get it out of the food. So but in this country, there's so many things that are used in our food supply that are banned in Europe, like BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene, food additives, various dyes, and something called azodicarbonamide, which is a softener that makes like bread more like fluffy and soft. And it was used in Subway sandwiches. Our friend Vani outed them and said, this is your yoga mat material in your Subway sandwich.
And they got it taken out, right?
Pretended to eat her, and she got it out. But the FDA still says it's fine to eat.
Right.
And in Singapore, if you use it and you're a food producer, you get a $450,000 fine and 15 years in jail for putting it in the food.
That same ingredient.
The same ingredient.
That anyone can use in the U.S. right now.
In the U.S., yes. And most of the things that are safe, quote, safe here are banned in Europe. So it's like, they're not doing their job. And then antibiotics, we have 30 million pounds of antibiotics are used in animal feed. We have about 37 million total. So about 7 million for humans to treat disease and 30 million for animals. Why? For growth. It's a growth factor.
Right.
It makes them fat. And it makes humans fat too. And it is used for prevention from overcrowding. And the FDA says, well, this isn't a good idea. I mean, nobody thinks it's a good idea. But they go, well, would you pretty please not do it? It was a voluntary guideline that the FDA produced, not mandatory.
Please don't do it, yeah.
You have to have a vet certify that the animal's sick before you give them antibiotics.
Oh, man.
And now they continue to do it and just laugh. They had voluntary, the FTC put in voluntary guidelines around junk food marketing. Would you pretty please not advertise the bad stuff and advertise more good stuff? It was just voluntary, and the food industry went ballistic and had it overturned. So even the voluntary guidelines are nullified.
Like, no, wow.
And
sugar, it's like, I'm the first one to raise my hand when I say, like, I love sugar. And it's my biggest vice, right? Like, I love cookies and candies and cakes and brownies and anything you can think of, I love it, right?
We programmed.
I don't know why I don't have diabetes. So much sugar I've had my whole life. But
you can't be having that much because you look pretty good.
Well, I train hard too, right? I go through waves. But as a kid, I would drink like 9, 10 Dr. Peppers a day, I remember.
What?
Like some days in the summer, you're just sitting around.
You could have been president. Isn't that what our president?
Exactly. But I would run around and work out and play sports, but then I would just drink because I thought that's what was on TV.
You were 16, 18. You're like.
And I was like 9, 10, right? So I was like, but it was. You'd see it on commercials like your NBA superstar drinking Dr. Pepper or Sprite or whatever on the basketball court. And I don't know if it was just like subconscious or just it tasted good and you didn't think about it.
This is where the food industry is so, I talk about it in my book Food Fix, but the food industry is so strategic about how it advances its mission and goals. And it does it through multiple channels. And I'm just going to go through them because people just don't know.
Celebrity endorsements, right?
Yeah, the first, obviously, celebrity endorsements, which is the obvious one. They co-opt social groups. So they fund groups like the NAACP and Hispanic Federation. The African American and Latino communities are the most affected by diabetes and obesity. And they co-opt them by funding them. I want to show the movie Fed Up at the King Center in Atlanta. And Bernice King, Martin Luther King's daughter, was all about it and she was excited. But once we got it scheduled, a few days later, I got a call that we couldn't show it. I'm like, why? She says, because Coca-Cola funds the King Center.
No.
Yeah. I went to Spelman College, which is African American Women's College in Atlanta, And the dean said to me, half of the 18-year-olds coming into college have a chronic illness, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, 18-year-old women. And I'm like, why is there soda machines all over the campus? Why? It's just because Coke funds.
No.
And one of the people on the board of trustees is one of the highest executives at Coca-Cola.
Oh man.
An African-American woman. It's like, so they co-opt social groups. And that's why they, for example, oppose soda taxes, because they're in the, you know, in the funding of these big soda companies. And then, of course, they fund research. So they fund 12 times as much research, $12 billion worth of research a year to study nutrition. So Gatorade gets studied by Pepsi.
Really?
Gatorade's the best thing in the world. It's not, it's just sugar, right? Or, you know,
right.
So it corrupts and pollutes science. So people are confused. Why is there so much confusion about nutrition science? Third, they create front groups. Call them spin doctors. So they create front groups that seem like they're independent groups, like Crop Life,
yeah,
or you know, like
and they're tweeting
the Center for Consumer Freedom,
right,
or the American Council on Science and Health, which, by the way, is run by a bunch of doctors who suggest that pesticides are safe, that high fructose corn syrup is great for you, that smoking doesn't cause disease, and you know.
Why would they do that? Because they get paid a lot.
They're funded by Monsanto and Big Food and Pepsi. You just look at their funders. And they spent $30 million fighting GMO labeling in California, this front group. It was all funded by Monsanto, right? And then you got these front groups. And then you have them co-opting scientists and academies. So the nutrition academies, the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, their funding in large part comes from industry. And so the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is our main nutrition association, 40% of their funding comes from the food industry. You know, they have sponsored, you know, lectures at their meetings that are, you know, with people saying, well, high fructose corn syrup is good and diet drinks are good, and like,
right.
It's just completely corrupted. And so these professional societies give guidelines, and they're corrupt. And Dr. Ioannidis from Stanford, who's a scientist who looks carefully at the research and conflicts of interest, says, you know, these professional societies like the American Heart Association and Diabetes Association should not be making guidelines. And then, so you've got all these ways in which they sort of screw things up. And then, of course, they are aggressive in advertising and marketing, which is illegal in most countries. And then they have lobbyists running around Washington driving policy that supports all of what they do. So you've got this massive effort, and it's often subversive and illegal. And it's kind of shady.
You uncover all the lies about food, right?
That's right.
All the lies that the food industry tries to feed us and tell us, which is actually healthy for us, but when it's actually really bad.
That's right. And so, you know, my mission has always been about educating the public about the chemicals in the American food supply. And my first book, The Food Babe Way, was all about the chemicals. How do we get the chemicals out of our diet? And this book actually takes it a step further and goes behind the scenes and shows you exactly the playbook that the food industry uses to continue selling us these chemicals, to continue to confuse us about what's truly healthy so that we continue to buy their products.
Really? So it's like false marketing.
Absolutely.
It's the packaging, it's the marketing, the language, the words they use.
The things you read on social media, the things you see in the media.
They'll have a fit, like healthy looking woman or man on their packaging just to say this is how you're going to look, even though it's not good for you, whatever it may be, right?
That's right.
It's all marketing.
A lot of it is.
Okay.
Yeah. And
even if they have the ingredients that show that there's all these chemicals and bad stuff in it, they're saying other things on the front.
That's right.
On the face, it looks nice, but on the back, it's like all dirty.
Yeah. A perfect example of this is Diet Coke, right?
Oh, yeah.
Diet Coke diet, right, is part of the name, right? It makes you think that you're going to stay lean and trim and that you can get away with eating 0 calories and still enjoying this buzz from this caffeine and the sweetness from this drink. But what's really happening behind the scenes in your body is you're consuming artificial sweeteners that trick your brain into thinking that, hey, I'm receiving some nourishment because this thing is sweet and it tastes like something that has calories and nutrition. But in actuality, you're not getting any of those calories. So your body's like, wait a minute, I still need some nourishment. I still need nutrition. And so your body continuously craves additional food. And so you end up eating more than you would otherwise do. And so you end up in this yo-yo cycle of dieting and never being able to break free.
How many chemicals are in a Diet Coke, do you know? Or how many ingredients? Is it a lot, or is it?
It's not a ton of ingredients, but the ingredients are awful.
They're bad, yeah. I got you, yeah.
I mean, one of the ingredients is caramel coloring, right? I mean, caramel coloring is not the kind of that you would make like when you burn sugar, but it's made in a laboratory. You know, there's been studies that show that animal studies have shown that it's linked to cancer.
Wow.
You know, this is a caramel coloring you definitely do not want to be consuming on a regular basis in a drink.
Have you been seeing the commercials for Diet Coke?
No.
There's these amazing commercials I was watching a couple months ago that was like this kind of chill looking girl. I think I saw two of them. One was a guy and a girl. It was like this like cool casual girl who's like, life's short, have a Diet Coke. Like have one because you can. It wasn't like this. They was kind of almost saying like, this is bad for you. Life's short. Just enjoy some Diet Coke. Like have fun. Like do this, do that. You know.
Yeah, they're losing. I mean, they're losing the battle right now. I mean, in terms of
they're not trying to say this is good for you anymore.
Yeah, well, they've gotten away with a lot of different things, and there's many different stories that I share within the book that show how the Coke industry, the soda industry, whether it's Coca-Cola or Pepsi, you know, they have tried to change our perspective about health and diet in this country. They've said, you know what, it's not about sugar or carbohydrates, which our food is mainly made up of. It's actually about fat. You should eliminate fat in your diet. Or, hey, why don't you exercise more? And there's been evidence where, you know, not only have they colluded with the CDC and other government officials, they've colluded with, professors at some of the highest degree universities in our country to try to persuade the public that we have a problem with the fact that we don't exercise enough when really we're consuming too much sugar and too many empty calories, which is their products.
Wow.
So
how many of these companies are actually living by this kind of feeding you lies mentality?
That's a good question. The majority of companies that are, the legacy big food companies, the Kellogg's, the General Mills, the Campbell's, the Coca-Colas, the Pepsi's, the Mondelez, the Kraft Heinz, those are the ones that have really gotten away with, and I don't want to say murder, but they really have, because what has happened is that they're using the same playbook as the tobacco industry when it comes to determining what people crave, what makes them addicted to food, and what makes them continuously buy them. You know, the majority of chemicals that have been invented in the last 50 years or so have been invented for one reason: to improve the bottom line of the food industry. Not to improve our health, not for our nutrition, not to make us healthier, not to help us, achieve our health goals or to avoid disease. They've only been there to improve the bottom line of the food industry. So you just think about that. So when you look at an ingredient list and you see all these different chemicals in there, they are not serving a purpose for your nutrition or your body or to make you feel really great. They're just serving the interests of the food industry. And this example, it can be shown in a really unethical way when you look at our food versus other food in other countries. So for example, McDonald's French fries. Here in the United States, they're made with a slew of different chemicals. One of the chemicals is dimethyl polysiloxane. It's the same ingredient in silly putty.
Wow.
It's also an ingredient that is preserved with formaldehyde, and an ingredient that the FDA has not truly even studied or approved to be in our food system, right?
How can it be in McDonald's if it's not FDA approved?
Well, it's a GRAS. It's generally regarded as safe, but the ingredient itself is actually deemed safe by the food industry themselves, not the FDA. So there's this underlying assumption that our ingredients are being like managed and tested and safety tested by the government, right? But the FDA doesn't have any of the mechanisms to do that. So they rely on the food industry themselves to say, hey, this stuff's okay. Now in Europe, they have different standards. They say you need to prove this stuff safe before you put it in your food. So in Europe, when you look at McDonald's French fries, they use 3 basic ingredients.
Really?
Potatoes, oil, and dextrose, which is just sugar, and then you can add the salt after you fry it. So you can actually determine how much salt you have on McDonald's French fries in Europe. But here in the United States, totally different scenario. And I think one of the most unethical behaviors is when big food manufacturers, especially American food manufacturers, start to change their products overseas to meet regulations and not change them here. So a great example of it is the...
So American food companies change stuff overseas because they have to.
Right.
Here, they'll cut corners to save money.
Yeah. And a great example of this was the Kraft petition that I started to remove artificial food dyes from mac and cheese. In Europe, if you use yellow 5 and yellow 6 in a product or any of these artificial food dyes, you have to put a warning label that says may cause adverse effects on activity and attention in children. Now, this warning label is mandatory by the government.
If you use these ingredients.
Right. But here in the United States, you can get away with using them. So instead of putting the warning label on Kraft mac and cheese in Europe, Kraft said, you know what, we're going to change the ingredients. We're going to put beta carotene and paprika. That's what we're going to use over there. But we're not going to change them here in the United States. So they know that their product could cause hyperactivity in children, but they choose not to change it because our government allows them to get away with it. And I feel like that's the most unethical food practice ever because as a company, as someone who is serving food to you, as two people, you have, I think, an ethical obligation to say, you know what, I should serve it the least harmful as possible to people. I shouldn't know this information about different regulations and just ignore it for different populations because I can get away with it and make more money.
Wow. Crazy. Now, you did a campaign against Kraft a while ago, right?
That's right. It received over 300,000 signatures.
No way.
Kraft changed. Yeah, Kraft has now removed artificial food dyes from their mac and cheese well as,
So they moved the yellow 5 or whatever?
It's gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's gone.
So 300,000 names, they removed 1 or 2 ingredients or?
Yeah, they actually, they rechanged it, and it was really funny because the way they launched it, you know, of course they wouldn't give the activists credit or you know, the people out there that were demanding this, all of the parents that wrote in and wrote letters. Instead, they said, oh, you know, this is like new and improved, and you've always just the same mac and cheese you've always loved, you know, they really just made it
like we heard your voices.
Yeah. It wasn't like, you know, the customers wanted this.
Right. You did this with Subway as well. I remember you doing a campaign and
That's
a video about how it had like a yoga mat ingredient in there or something like.
That's right. So that's another example of an ingredient. It was called azodicarbonamide. We dubbed it the yoga mat chemical.
I don't even know what that means. What is it? Like, what are these chemicals, you know?
Yeah. You know, it's a chemical that's used as a dough conditioner. So, you know, when you look at a piece of bread that's been manufactured and you see all those little itty bitty holes and they're like in this perfect realm. But if you bake a bread at home or something has a big hole in the middle and if you get really good bread from a restaurant that they bake there, it's like all, you know, it's not uniform. Well, azodicarbonamide makes it really uniform. So when you're a fast food giant and you want your bread to all be the same and made exactly the same so people know what they're getting when they get there, you know, and it, you know, it does cheapen the process in terms of it makes it faster to produce as well. That's what they were using. And this ingredient was not only banned in Europe and other places around the world. You would get fined like, you know, several $100,000 in Singapore if you use this chemical because of the interactions it had with not only it being up in the air and you can inhale it, but also when it's broken down, it turns into a carcinogen. And so, you know, knowing that Subway was using this chemical here in the United States and not elsewhere across the globe, because Subway is was the largest, no longer the largest fast food chain because of this campaign.
They were the largest.
They were the largest, yeah.
Bigger than McDonald's or bigger than?
They were. They had more stores than McDonald's
at
one point.
Really?
At that point, yeah.
Wow.
They did. Yeah, 4 years ago they did. They had more stores than
Wow.
McDonald's. They were worldwide, but they were choosing again to service these cheaper, more alarming chemicals here in the United States. And so, you know, I wanted, you know, these campaigns weren't about taking out this chemical or that chemical and suddenly having these products be super healthy. It was about showcasing what is in your food, making people become aware of it. And not only have people become aware of it, there's this amazing trend happening in the marketplace where people are wanting organic and natural foods now. And it's a continuous marketplace that continues to grow because people are becoming aware about what these chemicals are and they don't want to consume them.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful thing. So we're in this amazing food movement and through this change and being a catalyst for this change and being a voice for this change, you know, I received enormous pushback from several experts and, you know, quote unquote experts. Didn't know that they were hired experts at the time. I had my hunches that they were hired by the food and chemical industry. And I received a ton of backlash online for these campaigns, and it came out of nowhere.
Wow.
And at the time, I really didn't know how to handle it. And the only way that I knew what to do was just to like sit here and like not listen to it. So like I canceled Google Alerts.
Wow.
Because not
so
only
much negativity,
there was so much negativity, and I realized that my mission shouldn't be driven upon what people say about me, whether it's positive or negative. So when something would happen positive in the press, I'd ask my mother and my team not to send it to me, and I'd ask also anything negative, don't send it to me, because really my mission should come from within, right?
Yeah.
It's really the reason why I'm doing this is not so that I can be popular or be featured in some mainstream magazine. It was so that I could get this message out. I want to talk about the chemicals. I want to talk about the food industry. I want to talk about how people's lives can change and not feel like a zombie anymore, like I used to feel in my early 20s when I was eating all of this processed food. And so, so as a result of me being an activist and me, you know, getting into this kind of spotlight environment. I mean, right after the book came out, you know, after I was on this podcast, I mean, my world just like blew up. I
Really?
mean, you know, Time Magazine reached out. We're like, you know, we're naming you one of the most influential people on the internet. And I was just like, what?
Right.
Like, what? Like next to Barack Obama? Like, no, you're crazy. Jimmy Fallon, like, you're crazy, right? You're crazy. And I was getting these kind of accolades, right? But I also at the same time was being pressured and pushed by this agenda, this media agenda, to paint me as pseudoscientific or someone who doesn't understand chemicals or someone who just, you know, is being a fear monger or trying to make people afraid of these chemicals in this processed food. And they wanted to paint me as this. And so I found myself in this kind of like media frenzy of all these people wanting to interview me, but for the wrong reasons. And so I started to just take a look at what was driving some of these interviews, who were the people behind these requests, and then who were the antagonists in the story that they were interviewing. And it became very, very clear that there was a campaign that was being funded by the food and chemical industry, driven by several different PR firms to attack me as a messenger of change and to do whatever they could do to get me to stop.
Yeah.
And not only did they want to do whatever they could do to get me to stop, but they also wanted to confuse the public so that when anybody would listen to something I would say, they would try to question it and say, well, maybe she's just being a little outlandish about this.
I remember seeing this, like on Twitter, there was tons of responses to everything you'd put out and people just spamming everyone and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was actually an AstroTurf campaign. And actually, this is a tactic that's not only used to take down activists, but it's used to take down ideas in the public. So when the food industry wants you to believe a certain thing, or the chemical industry, or a big conglomerate, or any type of industry, they will hire not only astroturfers, like, you know, groups of online trolls, really,
Just try to get you to shut up.
just to try to get people to shut up, or to make people who are trying to change the status quo feel stupid about it. So they'll do whatever they can to try to get you to stop sharing the truth. And so not only will they bully you online, but they'll go into comment sections of mainstream media articles and try to fight with people in there and try to showcase fake comments to take the side of the food industry, to take the side of the corporations. And not only are there these online troll groups, but they're really being driven by these front groups that are, they look like third-party independent groups, right? They have these long fancy names, these councils.
Associations.
They have these long fancy names, but really they're really there being funded by Coke and Monsanto and all of these other, you know, giant food and chemical companies that are trying to drive the agenda. And one perfect example of this that happened recently is, I'm sure you saw it, headlines everywhere, coconut oil isn't healthy. It was on the front of the USA Today.
Wow.
It was everywhere. And, you know, as a person who's been studying health and nutrition now for over 10 years, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
How's it not healthy?
Yeah. And it was I mean, I'm not talking, it was just in USA Today. I mean, it was on everything. And it was because the American Heart Association was the one delivering the message. And people believe this association. Little do they know that the AHA seal used to be on Trix and other cereals that were terrible for your health. But and they're, you know, they've had their seal, you know, you can buy their seal basically and put it. I mean, it was on Subway. It was on a lot of different fast food chains. But not only that is, you know, people see this American Heart Association and they just automatically believe it. They don't even know that a lot of it's being driven by the food and chemical industry and that their experts are being paid secretly behind the scenes from the corn and the canola industry.
Crazy.
So the corn and canola industry is driving this message that coconut oil is unhealthy because they see coconut oil sales take over their sales because people are becoming aware of, wait, how's corn oil produced? How's canola oil produced? Oh, it's produced with hexane and a very carcinogenic gas. And oh, it's inflammatory, causing in my system. It is an abundance of omega-6 fatty acids. And no wonder I need omega-3 in my life and why my body's so out of whack and why I'm experiencing depression and Alzheimer's and all these other diseases because of this reason, right? So, so you see that, you know, you look something, you know, you see a headline and you just automatically believe it. I mean, it was so believable that my mom is texting me and she's like, Vani, I told you so. I didn't like coconut oil anyways.
Wow.
Like she's always been like, she just likes good old fashioned butter,
Sure,
which
sure,
is good.
yeah.
But you know, I've always told her like, if you fry something, fry it in some coconut oil versus like, you know, canola oil or corn oil or soy oil. And she's like, look, it's all over the paper. And she's even believing it. And meanwhile, if you don't look behind the headline, you don't look into who's driving this message and the experts who are being paid to promote this agenda, you are going to suffer as an individual because you're going to believe this information. You're going to make these choices about your health and what you're feeding your family, and you're setting them up for failure. And so this is what Feeding You Lies is about. Exposing these tactics, exposing this playbook so that you as a consumer, you become a health investigator yourself. You can see beyond a headline now after reading this book. You can see when you see slews of comments believing one thing that just, you know, your intuition is like saying, I don't know about this. You can kind of dig deeper and see, whoa, is this an AstroTurf campaign? And I give you tactics on how to handle that if that happens to you. You know, if you're leaving a comment and people are bullying you about a certain belief or view. And not only that, but there are specific lies in there that affect us every single day at the grocery store. When you see a label that says gluten-free and you're on a gluten-free diet, doesn't mean that that product is safe. It doesn't.
It might be gluten-free, but it might be filled with all these other chemicals.
That's right. I mean, you know, the food industry loves a good diet, right? They love love anything that they can use to market processed food in a different way that is fashionable and trendy. And the trendy thing right now is gluten-free, right? Actually, the next one is keto, right? And you even see like Slim Fast getting into keto products, and their products are garbage. It's absolute garbage for your body. I mean, there's you know, they're full of synthetic chemicals, vitamins and minerals, you know, different artificial sweeteners that, you know, make your metabolism just completely like shut down because it starts to like create leaky gut. And, you know, you have all of these chemicals that really shouldn't be part of your diet.
You said American milk is something that we should not have in order to fix leaky gut.
Yeah.
Is there such thing as non-American milk that is okay to drink?
Yeah, so most people can have sheep milk, can have goat milk. Interestingly enough, goat milk traditionally was called mother's milk because the components in goat milk are very different than cow milk. Yeah. They're far more similar to human milk. Wow. And so I actually tell mothers, if they're going to, you know, give their child some animal milk, please make it goat milk, rather than cow's milk.
Okay. And is there any other foods that we should not eat to heal our
Leaky gut.
So the more you,
and I know you talk about this in Plant Paradox as well, but
yeah, the more you, there are a few people that actually react to either the white or the yolk of eggs. Most people don't.
Okay.
But we test for those. And here's just something to throw out.
Yes.
I don't want to cause widespread panic.
Yes.
There is a
There's already enough of that in the world right now.
That's right. Yeah, we got plenty. There is a lectin in spinach that I was unaware of, but thanks to a company called Vibrant America, they discovered that there are a class of lectins called aquaporins, and they're present in tobacco, they're present in spinach, they're present in corn, they're present in soybeans, they're present in green peppers, and I think that's it. Anyhow, they actually can cause leaky gut, and they can cause leaky brain. And I stumbled upon this because I have a few people with really bad IBS and really bad autoimmune disease who are saints. They follow my program. They never cheat. Why would they?
Why do they still have
issues? Why do they still have issues? And so when we had these new tests, lo and behold, almost every one of these people reacted to spinach.
No way.
And they ate a lot of spinach. Wow. And knock on wood so far, when we took the spinach away from them, that was the key. Now, don't everybody go home and throw out your spinach. But if you're following my program and my program does have spinach in it and we're still having problems,
take it out.
Consider giving up spinach. There's no human need for spinach.
Now you said, what was her name? Is she a Dr. Terry? Is that her name?
Terry Walls, Dr. Terry Walls.
You said she was doing like 10 or 12 cups of veggies a day for
9 cups of vegetables.
The snake looking back at you.
Yeah.
Now what should those, now why is it important to have 9 cups of vegetables, and what does that do for your microbiome in your gut every day?
So getting back to Dr. David Kessler, head of the FDA. We thought that carbohydrates were carbohydrates, and and complex carbohydrates, starches were fine because they're complex carbohydrates. Everybody was wrong. Food manufacturers have figured out how to make a complex carbohydrate a simple carbohydrate and make you think it's a complex carbohydrate. Okay. So when you read a label, number one, if you have to read a label, you should put the package back, because there shouldn't be a label on a head of lettuce.
Right.
Give you an example. But you have to take, and if the take-home point from this is we'll save so many people's lives. Read total carbohydrates on the label, then take away the dietary fiber. That'll be the next thing under it. So that will tell you the amount of grams of sugar per serving in that package. Do not look at where it says sugar.
That's inaccurate.
Do not look at added sugar. It is a lie.
So if it says 0 sugar, 0 added sugar.
Yeah. So let me give you an example that he used on my podcast, which was a great example. He said, what would you find in a store? The label says it's 300 calories. It has 0 fat. It has 0 grams of sugar. And it has 4 grams of protein. And it has 35 grams of carbohydrates.
Is that broccoli? I don't know. What is that?
It's a bagel.
A bagel?
A bagel. And
wow. 300 calories?
300 calories.
Wow.
0 sugar.
How does that have 0 sugar? I thought
that's just
it.
It
turns into sugar.
The label law lies to you. It's got 35 grams of carbohydrates. Now, to make that make sense,
sugar, right?
which is sugar. It is pure sugar. In fact, it is better than sugar the way it has been manufactured. So you take, to figure out how much that is, there's 4 grams of sugar per teaspoon. So let's take his 35 grams of sugar, divide by 4. Let's make it easy, make it 36 grams. That's 9 teaspoons of raw sugar in that bagel.
In a bagel.
So that's number one. All of a sudden you have...
How many grams of sugar would that be?
That's, well, so a Coke, a 12-ounce Coke is
like
about
what?
12 grams of sugar.
Wow.
So you're basically chugging a Coke when you eat a bagel. And it'll actually get into your bloodstream faster than if you chugged a Coke.
No way. How is it going faster when it's just
because
liquid?
it's been broken down. You actually have to digest the sugar molecule in the Coke. You don't have to digest the sugar molecule in a bagel.
Really?
Yeah, in main lines. So that's number one. Number two, what nobody knew was the bacteria, that most of your bacteria live down in your colon and your lower part of your small intestine. And they're waiting for the complex carbohydrates that you do not digest normally. They're waiting for their meal that always used to come. And that meal never comes anymore because everything's been so finely processed that we don't get those complex carbohydrates down to them. So they starve to death. Now, what's really cool is that those guys take that meal and they make all these really cool compounds that, number one, keep the wall of the gut intact, allow the wall of the gut to heal itself. They make compounds that actually are text messages to the mitochondria in all of our cells, and particularly in our brain, that guys down in the engine room are working under full power, and we've got, Scotty beam me up sort of thing, give me warp drive 5, and we've got the power, and, it's okay to go into hyperspace. If they don't make those compounds, your mitochondria go, geez, I got nothing to work with here, and we got no backup system. I'm going to sputter down to a crawl. And people wonder why they're fatigued, even though they're eating more than ever, and they're eating all these sports drinks, and they're having 27 cups of coffee, and going, where's my energy? And it's because we no longer have this beautifully designed symbiotic relationship, and we've starved the most important part of us. And that's why Jack LaLanne said, if it tastes good, spit it out.
So why 9 cups of vegetables then?
Because that is actually giving those guys what they want to eat. Now, Terry didn't know this back then, but her first book was Minding My Mitochondria, or Feeding My Mitochondria. But now we know it's actually, we gotta feed those guys. We have to eat for them.
Mitochondria.
We gotta eat for the bacteria.
You got 9 pieces of primal advice for athletes. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs could live this way too, and still be better entrepreneurs, be more productive, have better relationships, be sharper, all these different things.
And I think everything you do to be a better athlete makes you a better entrepreneur.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you talk about adequate sleep, and this is something I've been talking about a lot lately on my podcast and bringing out different sleep experts. But why just emphasize, is sleep important for you?
I mean, sleep is when the body renews and regenerates, repairs itself. It's when a lot of the neural networking happens. To overlook sleep and to think, well, I can sleep when I'm dead. Well, that just is such faulty logic.
Yeah.
It's so critical and so important. I try to get 8 hours a night myself. If I get less than 6 for some reason, I feel it. I know it. I try to make up for it. I try not to let that happen. I try not to schedule late nights because I wake up at the same time pretty much every morning. So if
6 a.m. wake up, or
6:30, 6 a.m., 6:30. But if I were to go to bed at 1, I'd still wake up at my normal time.
Yeah.
And so I have to really force myself to, not force myself, because I'm tired at the end of the day. And I have this whole wind down process.
What is that?
So my wife and I will watch we'll do some television after dinner. We'll catch up on, we'll do some binge watching, catching up of whatever the latest series was. But around 10, we'll break. I have a pool in my backyard and a jacuzzi. So I go into, the pool's unheated. So in the wintertime, it might be in the 50s.
Wow.
I'll walk into the pool and hang out there for a couple of minutes and get really, really cold, but not to the point of shivering. Just it's kind of a process in and of itself. Then I'll get in the jacuzzi. So my wife and I'll hang out in the jacuzzi. We'll just recap what the day's events were. It's very We turn off all the lights in the house. We have a fire pit out there, so there's a real sort of a primal caveman kind of thing to that. Then I'll just finish off with another minute in the cold, and towel off and go up to bed, and I sleep like a baby as a result of that.
Wow,
so
that's hot cold therapy.
Yeah, the hot cold therapy, and that's kind of how I wind my day down, and that prepares me to sleep, brings my body temperature down, which is they say that you should have your lower body temperature to sleep better. We keep the room around 67.
Yes.
We have blackout curtains, so it's a real cool sleeping environment.
Yes. I always like to keep it cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so if you do like a cold shower before bed, do you think that's a good thing?
I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
It'll help you sleep better.
I think so. Try it. I mean, it can't hurt.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talk about stress and rest balance. What does that mean?
Well, there are certain stresses in your life that are unavoidable. Work stress, commuting stress,
right.
Sometimes training
Waiting
stress.
in the lobby for 45 minutes stress. Sorry.
Well, I'm more stressed about the traffic coming from
right.
Because you never know what it's going to be. It could be, I planned for 2 hours. I got here in an hour, or I got here in less than an hour.
Right.
So
that's good.
Yeah. But so you have these stresses, and some of them are imagined, even though your brain thinks they're real. They don't exist. Our stress mechanisms in the body they evolved to handle true life or death situations. A tiger bearing down upon you, right. An infection that's going to kill you, a broken leg that may, whatever, have its impact on you. Not, am I going to miss my kid's rehearsal, or am I going to be late for work or whatever? Those cause stress, but they're not life threatening, and yet the brain sees them as life threatening. So the message here is that you sort of have to identify stresses and then appropriately orchestrate certain rest and recovery. Now, we talked about this before the show, that meditation is a form of rest and recovery. But just taking, maybe if you need a nap, you can do that. But certainly that goes back to the whole sleep thing being critical. But the other part of rest is recognizing, if you're an athlete, recognizing when it's just inappropriate to go out and train just because your schedule says, I have to go do 6 miles today. Yeah. If you wake up that day and you feel like crap, and the metrics, the heart rate variability is wrong, or you're just not feeling good, then you're better off taking that day off than plowing through it and being able to write in your logbook, yeah, I got through the workout, felt like crap, but I got through the workout.
I was just rested that day.
Just rest on that, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and the third thing you talk about is personalized schedule, and inconsistency is the key.
So in primal endurance, we go back to that philosophy that the body, is a very sort of temperamental. It's in temperamental states, back and forth. Sometimes you're in a state of energy and health, and sometimes you're not. And you can't really plan on when those states are going to be, so you have to be willing to listen to the cues. And for that reason, we say inconsistency is the key to consistent racing if you're an athlete. So it's when you feel good, you can go hard. When you don't feel good, back off. You take time off. We use the term periodicity, so you can periodize your training so that there are tranches of training days, a week at a time, where you're really going deep, hard, and then you might take a week off, or take it real easy and back off. You can break those further up into quarterly, annual segments, always with the idea that some days are going to be good, some days are going to be bad. You're going to trend toward wanting to build, to ratchet up over time, but you're okay kind of not doing stuff as hard. And so it doesn't become this linear kind of progress. It becomes more of a fractal thing that trends toward improvement.
Gotcha. The next thing you talk about is aerobic emphasis. Train slow to race fast. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this is the toughest one for current endurance athletes to really to grok. And that is a lot of athletes, and I was certainly one for 20 years, you basically go out and you train to hurt. So you run or you ride or you swim at a heart rate that's 75 to 90% of your max heart rate, and you see how long you can hold that, right? And so you're training to hurt, and it hurts.
It hurts you.
It does hurt you, but you feel tough as a result of it. But the problem is you're not really training the body to become more efficient. You're just training yourself to hurt. So when we talk about efficiency in racing, we go back to the original premise about glucose and glycogen being sort of this determining factor in muscle tissue. When you run out of glycogen, you sort of hit the wall. So how do you manage glycogen? Well, one way would be to eat a lot of carbohydrates and drink a lot of gels during the race. The other would be to become so good at burning fat that you never really tap into that glycogen.
Interesting.
So we train you to become so good at burning fat. Now, that's the 80% that we talked about with the diet. But the other part of that for the endurance athlete is if you train at a low enough heart rate that you are, it's typically it's 180 minus your age. So let's just say you're 40 years old. So 180 minus 40 is 140. So that's going to be your maximum heart rate. You're never in your training, you're not going to go above that. You set your watch, you set your heart monitor to give you a signal as soon as you get above 140. Now, you start out and you at that 140, maybe you can only run 13-minute miles, even though you're capable of running 7-minute miles at 175 beats a minute or whatever.
Right.
But now what we're doing is we're measuring how good you are at burning fat. And we know that at that number, 180 minus your age, that's the highest rate that you can put oxygen through your system and know that you're burning mostly fat. And
Really?
we know that because that's the pace at which you could breathe. You could close your mouth and breathe through your nose and get plenty of oxygen. Or that's the pace at which you could be with a training partner and talk without losing your breath. Once you start losing your having to catch up or having to get winded, we know that you're going into burning. You're building up lactic acid.
You're not burning fat.
You're not burning fat, or you're burning less fat and starting to burn more sugar. So we want you to be at the highest end of your fat burning without tapping into your sort of glycolytic abilities. And we know that number to be generally around 180 minus your age. So now the idea is you go out and you train, and the first day you go out, you're running 13-minute miles, and that's as fast as you can go without the heart rate, bumping up to over 140. Well, you're not very good at burning fat. You might be good at burning sugar. Like I say, you might be able to run 7-minute miles or 6-minute miles.
Right.
So, but over time, if you stay at that at that maximum heart rate which is low, much lower than you're used to, you find yourself running 12-minute miles, and then 11-minute miles, and then 10:30s and 10 and 9:30s. And what it means is, even though the heart rate hasn't changed, you're still putting the same amount of oxygen through. Now you're burning more fat. So you're becoming more efficient at burning fat. So that when you do decide to ramp up and throw in the interval training and the weight stuff that we have you do in the gym, now you're starting from a baseline of being a much better fat burner than everyone else around you.
So just so I wrap my head around this, is your heart rate dictating how much fat you can burn based on how?
No. So your heart rate is dictating how much oxygen you're putting through your system, and it's because it's delivering oxygen to the muscles, and the muscles are using oxygen to burn fat. They can burn glycogen or glucose with oxygen, but they also burn without oxygen.
Okay.
So like you could run a 100-meter sprint with your nose plugged, and there's no oxygen involved. It's
fine.
all you'd still want to
breathe.
You'd want to breathe at the end of it, but and you'd have to breathe to recover, to recycle, but you don't need that oxygen to burn that full amount.
Gotcha.
So when we train the body to become more efficient at burning fat, and by the way, the heart, it's interesting. The heart, we're not training the heart to be stronger. The heart's already pretty strong. So the heart doesn't get stronger. The heart doesn't have a PR, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean? It does.
Yes.
It does what it does. But what happens is you become more efficient with the materials that the heart gives you. So if the heart is pumping oxygen, X amount of oxygen, and you're not good at burning fat, you can't do anything with that oxygen. But the better you are at burning fat, the more you can use that oxygen and burn the fat in the mitochondria and avoid having to go into that glycogen storage situation.
Okay.
All right? So it's really about training you to become more efficient at burning fat.
Gotcha.
Not forever, but it's certainly through the base building phase.
Okay.
And that's just a huge hurdle for a lot of endurance athletes to overcome, because they go, wait a minute, I can already run 7-minute miles. Why am I dropping down to 13s? But invariably and across the board, we see if they stick to this for weeks at a time, they become more and more efficient. So now we know that now you're running 7-minute 30-second miles, and you're getting 92% of your energy from fat.
Wow.
So that when you do decide to run those 6-minute miles, now you're starting from having burned more fat, and you don't have to use as much glycogen to get there.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Structured intensity, what does this mean?
It means partly means you've got to go into the gym and do some heavy lifting.
Yes.
But not a lot.
Okay.
And
this is if you want to be an endurance athlete.
If you want, even if you want to be an endurance athlete, one thing that athletes used to avoid like the plague was the gym.
Right.
They would, or if they went, they would do 50 repetitions of a light weight because they're thinking, well, I'm doing, when I'm running a marathon, I'm running 3,000 repetitions of a leg turnover. So why don't I simulate that in the?
But you're saying lifting some weights is going to be key to your endurance as well.
So what happens in any long endurance contest, in addition to running out of fuel, is you run out, your power decreases because you haven't trained the power. An example would be you've got 3 hills to climb in a bike race. The first one, you go up with 100% of your power. The second one, even though you have energy, your muscle fibers are they've been exhausted, and they haven't trained to sustain your power. So now you go up the second hill at 82% of your max power, and you might go up the third hill at 65% of your max power. Well, if we could train those muscle fibers deeper and deeper to sustain power for those efforts that require actual power, we can maybe go up that first hill at 100 and go up that second hill at 100 and that third hill at 95.
Right.
So we do this work in the gym where you load muscle fibers up with fairly heavy weights. It's typically 80% of your 1 rep max, and we do sequential repetitions with sequential rest in between. So it's not like you do 3 sets of 5 and you stop. It's like you do 3 repetitions, rest 10 seconds, 3 repetitions, rest 10 seconds, 2 repetitions, rest 10 seconds, rest 20 seconds, and until you can't finish 1 good rep, and then the workout's over. So it's not you just did 1 set, and it might have comprised 200 repetitions.
Right.
But that maximally loaded the fibers deeper and deeper and gave you this ability to sustain power.
Gotcha. And the next thing you talk about is lifestyle practices. What do you mean by that?
Well, so now we talk about everything else but the training. So if you're, it's spending time with your family, it's playing games with your, playing frisbee with your dog,
yes,
playing ultimate with your friends. It's it's all of the other things that make life enjoyable. That as an endurance athlete, I know I used to go, well, I can't afford to do that. I might get injured, or I might.
Right.
I can't go skiing because I might twist a knee. Well, if you do the training right and you spend that time in the gym, you're less likely to twist a knee skiing than if you were, than if you were just going to the slopes without having done any training at all.
Sure.
Right. So, we want people to have a full life, because training for endurance contests should be preparation for an undertaking that you would not want to encounter on a daily basis. You want to wake up in the morning and go, "Oof, I got that 10K today. I got to go clean out my GI tract. I'm so nervous."
Right.
But you want to be that nervous because you want to put it all on the line that day.
Yeah.
What we're saying is, don't put it all on the line every day in your training. Have fun. Do the right sort of training that builds this beast, that when you get to the race, you're going to enjoy it, you're going to have fun, you're going to perform probably better than if you'd done the old paradigm of training.
Right.
But you'll have lived a life in the interim. I mean, so many of my, ex-triathlete marathon buddies, couldn't have a relationship. It was just, imagine.
They put all their energy in this one thing.
Yeah, I mean, they, it's like the wife says, "Can't you stay home and cuddle, on a Saturday morning?" And the husband goes, "No, I got a 100-mile ride I got to do."
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go, run after that. And then I'm going to take a nap because I'm going to feel like crap because I did so much. So we try to look at the life in general and say, well, an awesome life includes participating in these events.
Participating in life.
And doing well, but it also includes participating in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not to the exclusion of all of everything else.
There's the social issues. People don't understand that the quality of the food we eat, the processed food, the refined oils, the sugars, the chemicals, the additives, affect behavior. We know, for example, Lewis, that in prisons, if you give people a healthy diet in prisons, they will reduce violent crime in the prison by 56%. If you add a vitamin supplement, it goes down by 80% because they're all nutritionally depleted. I mean, I had a patient, not a patient, he was a guy who was in jail, he was a murderer. He wrote me a handwritten letter years ago. He said, "I followed your program in jail. I realized I was a murderer. My behavior was so violent my whole life. And when I changed my diet, I became a completely different person. I realized it was what I was eating. And now I'm so thankful for having my life back.
So you think our diet also determines our behavior?
Absolutely. There's clear evidence about that. I was just reading a study the other day that showed that people who eat a lot of carbohydrates and sugars and starches have much more violent behavior. We know that people who eat refined oils, which we now have 10% of these as our calories from soybean oil. It's in everything. It's not necessarily we put it in our food. It's in every packaged processed food. That has led to increase in homicides and violence and suicides around the world. And we've gotten higher on these refined omega-6s and low on omega-3s. So the evidence of how it affects behavior, mood, poverty, it keeps poor communities down. And then the food industry targets these communities disproportionately. So you have all these things happening at the same time. And then kids. Kids can't learn in school because they're eating Doritos and Coke, and they can't actually focus and learn, and their behavior's all erratic, and they're on these chemicals which alter their behavior. That's why 1 out of 6 kids has some neurodevelopmental problem, which is enormous, right? ADD now affects 1 out of 10 kids. I think 14% of kids have ADD, and about 1 in 10 kids are on medication.
Do you think ADD can be removed if we have a better diet? Or is that something?
Absolutely.
Like the brain? Or?
No, absolutely. No, it's not a brain problem. It's a body problem, and the body problem is caused by our diet and by environmental toxins. And I've had hundreds of ADD patients who've transformed their lives. I mean, I just, we were talking about the Broken Brain documentary series I did. I had a guy, I was in a New York Russian bathhouse the other day, and this guy comes in, I saw your series. I've been on ADD medication my whole life, and it helped me get off my medication. I mean, we see this. So you've got health, you've got the economy, you've got social justice and poverty issues, you've got climate, you've got environment, you've got education. It's all connected. And the issue is that most people don't connect the dots, number one, and most people don't realize that we're in this situation because of money in the food system that's driving our policies.
Right. You were mentioning how there's some press hits that you do. I won't mention who, but that would say you can't talk about certain things because of a sponsor that's funding the program.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So you can't talk negative about one brand or one product or because of that,
That's right. I was told, well, you can't cover this subject because we get our funding from this sponsor. I can tell you a story from the past because the show's not on the air anymore. Sure. It was the Martha Stewart show. And I was on the show, and we were working with a producer, and we were talking about getting healthy and working out and detoxing, and Martha had her trainer there. And the producer says, well, we're going to have to do a bit as part of the segment on dairy and how dairy is such a great sports recovery drink.
No way.
Yes. And so I was like, I'm just sorry to tell you, but there's all this evidence that that's not true. So I downloaded all the scientific papers documenting the science behind the fact that dairy isn't a sports drink. And he's like, I know, but we kind of have to because this spot is sponsored by the Dairy Council.
Oh my gosh.
And then if you're ever on television, you know that the experts don't get notes. They don't get cue cards. They don't get teleprompters. They have to know their stuff. Well, this woman, who was the trainer, had all these cue cards that was being held up about dairy with all the bullet points of why dairy is such a great food and sports drink. It's insidious. So we think we're getting news. We're thinking getting authentic
from experts too. From doctors or specialists or experts, and we are influenced by these experts.
Huge. I mean, the evidence is so clear that the industry is heavily funding science, and they're funding corrupt science. So if you look at the data, for example, artificial sweeteners, 99% of the studies done by the food industry show that they are safe. 99% of the studies on artificial sweeteners done by independent scientists find that they're not safe. If your industry funds a study, they're 8 to 50 times more likely to find a positive benefit for their product.
Right, of course.
Right? Whereas you look at and then you look at the American Heart Association, the American Diabetic Association, the American Nutrition Dietetic Association. These are all funded by the food industry. I mean, if you look, it's Coca-Cola, it's Pepsi, it's Cargill. It's frightening to see how much money is. You have Trix cereal for kids as a heart-healthy cereal. Cocoa Puffs, Lucky Charms. I mean, Trix has 7 teaspoons of sugar, red dye, blue dye, yellow dye, you die.
Right.
Like it's all in there, and it's a heart-healthy food. Why? Because they get $300,000 for every time they put that check on a box.
No way.
Yes, way. And this is happening globally. Globally, I mean, there's a huge battle going on in Malaysia now because Nestle has promoted this drink called Milo, which I never heard about, but it's a big drink in the developing world and in Asia and South America. And it's basically like Ovaltine. It's basically a malted beverage with sugar that has the same glycemic index as Coca-Cola. And they have athletes on there and sports characters and how it's a great drink for health. And they had this commercial, which I saw, which was a Filipino rock star singing this great, rap song about how everybody who's a kid has an energy gap. 4 out of 5 kids have this thing called an energy gap. I was at a medical conference.
What's an energy gap mean?
I was at a medical conference of 1,500 doctors. I said, has anybody here heard of an energy gap that 4 out of 5 kids have? No, they completely made this up. And they say these kids need Milo for the energy gap.
No way.
Yeah, and this guy who lives over in Malaysia called them out on this, and they came out with this huge propaganda campaign against him to discredit him and manipulating the facts and lying. And I was just watching this whole thing. It's unbelievable. So it's not an accident that we're in this situation.
Wow, the manipulation, yeah. And do you think that all inflammation, chronic pain, and disease can be eliminated from the foods we eat, or is caused by foods? Besides having like a car accident or something.
Yeah, I'm a functional medicine doctor. Run the Center for Functional Medicine at Cleveland Clinic, and so we look at the root causes of disease, and there are many. Right? There's environment, there's lifestyle, there's genetics. All affect these various systems in your body. Right? So we always say there's 5 causes of all disease, based on how they influence your genetics and combine with your lifestyle. Toxins, so environmental toxins, that's not your fault. That's just the fact that we put 80,000 chemicals in the environment without testing them. We have 3,000 food additives we eat every year as Americans, about 3 to 5 pounds of it, which is frightening. And there are heavy metals and pesticides everywhere. So we're exposed to a lot of toxins, and they make people sick. Infections, which we can get, whether it's viral infections and bacterial infections, Lyme disease, tick infections, allergens, which are increasingly common, or food sensitivities, things where your body's creating an immune response, whether it's gluten or dairy, those are big. And then poor diet and stress. All of those are contributing to disease. But by far, the biggest cause is food. Really? By far. And it affects, what's amazing is it's not just like a little bit. It's like people say, oh, my migraines or my arthritis or my irritable bowel. People don't connect the dots between how they feel and the food they're eating. And then when you switch, people have transformations very quickly.
Yeah. They notice it quickly.
Quickly, yeah.
And pain goes away, the weight goes off, all these things.
Yeah, I always say food is medicine. It's not just like a medicine. It works faster, better, and cheaper than almost any drug. We have people who are off insulin, who are type 2 diabetics, within a week.
Wow.
And get off all their medications. There was a huge study just published on a ketogenic diet intervention for type 2 diabetics. And I don't think ketogenic diets are right for everybody, but in an extreme situation where your metabolism is so broken, it can help reset things. Basically, reducing carbs to 30 grams a day, 70% fat, and help in the context of a healthy plant-rich diet. And they were able to get 100% of the people in a year over diabetics off of the main diabetes medication and 94% off insulin or dramatically lower, with an average weight loss of 30 pounds, about 12% of body weight. And this is unprecedented in the research. Because food, if you know how to apply it in the right way, at the right dose for the right person, it's the most powerful drug.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. You talked about in the book that you've been studying food for 35 years.
40 now.
40 years.
I was like, I did the math. It's 2018. I was started in 1978 in college. And I'm like that old.
Here's the thing. You've got 11 New York Times bestselling books. You've probably done how many books total?
14.
14 books. 11 New York Times, including this one, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? And for 40 years, you've been studying food, and you say even the experts are confused by the science.
They are.
So how come
I figured it out? How come
you know all the answers?
I don't think
after 40 years.
Yeah, I don't think I know all the answers, but I don't have a bone to pick.
Yeah.
In other words, I haven't spent my life dedicated to the low-fat diet. I haven't been dedicated my life to
paleo,
veganism. I'm looking at what works. And the other thing I know is that I'm not an academic. Well, I do research, but that's not how I started. I'm a practicing doctor. So what's happened over the years is the latest thing comes in, I try it, see what happens to the patient. So seeing tens of thousands of patients, doing thousands and thousands of lab tests over the years, seeing what happens when people change their diet and how their biology responds, that's the best laboratory you'll ever see.
Right.
And I even noticed it myself. I was a vegetarian for 10 years, and I see pictures of myself when I was 28, and I am so scrawny, even though I ate really healthy. I ran 5 miles a day. I did yoga all the time. And I look at myself now doing far less exercise, and I'm far more muscular and have more muscle mass than I did when I was 28 because I've learned how to change my diet. And we know that the right kind of high fat diet and adequate protein actually increases muscle mass.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I literally just got off the phone with a friend who says, you know, I went on a vegan diet and 3 days into it, like I can't lift anymore.
Yeah, but then you see some athletes that are all vegan who have like gained muscle mass and gained strength, and you're like, well, what is the
Maybe
answer?
they're taking steroids. I don't know.
Who knows? Do you think so? You think living a vegetarian or vegan, fully vegan or vegetarian lifestyle, that it's hard to gain muscle mass?
I think it's hard. It's hard. It's not impossible. I mean, if you really work at it and really work out, and there are great vegan athletes out there, but there's never been a historically voluntary vegan society ever. And when you look at
Really?
Yes, and
When
when you look
blue
at
zones or
no, they were never exclusively vegan.
Really?
Right? They always had some animal food, right?
it.
The Kanawans,
fish or something.
yeah, and you know, as hunter-gatherers, we ate 800 species of plants, so we had a very plant-rich diet. But we also included wild animals when we could catch them.
Right, exactly.
You know? And so it's part of our evolutionary history, and our bodies are well adapted. And the protein in vegetables is different. So, for example, there's something called leucine, which is an amino acid that is the rate-limiting amino acid for muscle synthesis. In other words, in order to build muscle, you need this amino acid. And it's very low in plant proteins, very high in animal proteins.
Right.
So
why not just live a plant-based diet and then have the supplements?
you could,
and the,
you could. And I have patients who are vegans, monks. I mean, I'm not going to force people not to eat it, but it's much harder to do, and you have to know what you're doing. And I see people over time, initially, when they switch from a processed American diet to a whole foods vegan diet, they're going to get so much better.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
But the real issue is compared to what?
Right.
Right? What we really need to do is, and they've looked at over time, these big studies looking at animal and plant proteins and stuff over time, looking at what people do. And there's a vegan, vegetarian, omnivore study, which was 245,000 people. It was an observational study, but they didn't find any difference in outcomes. Another study, 42-country study, looking at food pattern consumption over long periods of time, showed actually the people who had animal fat and protein did far better than people who focused on cereal grains in their diet, less heart disease. Another study, the PURE study, just came out recently, 135,000 people. It was 5 continents, I think 18 countries, 10 years. And there was actually an improvement when people had more saturated fat and more good fats and less cereal grains and more animal protein.
More animal protein or
more
animal protein, yeah.
It was not a risk factor.
Right.
Now, these are difficult studies to interpret sometimes because they're observational, but you look at interventional studies where you intervene by giving people high-fat protein diets with lots of plant foods. People do better metabolically. So,
really,
yeah, and it's very hard to eat a low glycemic diet if you're a vegan. You can, but it's very hard. I have a friend who's a keto vegan, and she's a type 1 diabetic, and she's rocking it. But you have to know what you're doing.
You have to be so disciplined.
Yeah, super disciplined, super smart about it.
That's challenging.
Yeah. So I think you know, and the data on meat, honestly, which I go into the book in great detail, is confusing for people because there's issues.
It all depends on the factors of the meat.
Yeah,
where you get it, the environment it's in, how it's fed, how it's raised, the stress of it,
right? Exactly.
How it's processed, everything, right?
Totally right. So you know, people go, we shouldn't be eating meat because it's bad for the animals, bad for the environment.
Right.
Yes, we should not be eating factory farm meat. This is really bad. It's bad for the animals, it's bad for the planet, it's bad for us because the quality of the meat is very poor. But let's say a wild elk or a grass-finished bison or even cow, very different. And it turns out that these animals actually have higher levels of omega-3 fats and higher levels of antioxidants and minerals and nutrients and beneficial fats and actually are a great source of protein and don't have the harm that we think they do. When you look at the studies that showed there was harm, the reason they show that is because when you do a study, observational study, you give people a questionnaire every year. So you take 10,000 people, 100,000 people, and every year you give them a questionnaire. What'd you eat? What'd you eat last week? What'd you know, if you can remember. And people answer according to what they think they should answer a lot of times, right? So if meat is bad, they're going to underestimate the amount of meat they're eating. So during the time of these studies, meat was considered bad. So people who ate meat didn't really care about their health. So they smoked, and the data show it. When you look at the factors of these people, their characteristics, which you can read in the studies, which I read, they were overweight, they smoked, they drank, they didn't eat fruits and vegetables, they didn't exercise, they didn't take vitamins, they ate more processed food, more sugar. Of course they were sicker.
what should we be doing on a daily basis to
We got to focus on
prevent
a couple of things. One is that you have to know the truth, and not a truth that was paid for. Okay? Because those truths, those aren't truths. Not in chronic illness. The truths that have been paid for, so someone says, oh, here's the truth about this illness, or here's the truth about Lyme, or here's the truth about, no, any truth that's been paid for that, that's not the ones you go with. Here's the truth. The truth is we have pathogens, we have toxic heavy metals, and we have to learn about the foods that feed these pathogens. And we have to learn how to remove these pathogens, kill them off. We have to learn how to remove toxic heavy metals out of our system. And we have to learn how to use foods as medicine to do it. But when everybody's playing guessing games, because they're removing gluten, but they don't know why they should, they'll end up eating gluten again because they don't know why they should even really remove it anyway.
So what does Spirit of Compassion tell you are the 3 to 5 things that you should never eat, or eat very limited amounts, like once a year?
The number one thing is eggs.
Don't eat eggs.
Don't eat eggs.
What?
Because the pathogens.
Oh no.
Yeah, the viruses.
I love eggs.
Look, take shingles virus for one. Like, Spirit of Compassion has taught me about what that virus does, right? As far as what symptoms it creates. The shingles virus, and science research doesn't know this, it creates trigeminal neuralgia. That's what it creates. So the shingles, you don't even have to have a rash anywhere in your body, and you can have gum pain, jaw pain, neck pain, ear pain, head pain on the side of the head. You can have body pain. You can have the shingles can do all of this, right? It can make your gums feel like they're burning. It can make your face feel like it's on fire. It can cause all these different things. And the shingles virus feeds off of eggs. So when you're eating eggs every single day, you're eventually going to get the shingles virus if you have it, because everybody has the shingles virus in their system. Most everybody has one.
It's got to be heightened.
It's got to be heightened.
Elevated.
Maybe you had an emotional experience that knocked you down really good. Maybe your immune system has been down because you're zinc deficient. That's a huge thing. That's why I'm always recommending zinc. And then you're eating eggs all day. Not all day. Some people eat them all day. But you eat eggs every day, 3-4 times. That's the first food. Here's the thing.
So eliminate it. Never eat eggs, or have them once in a while.
There's a big part of big pharma that's really dark that people are unaware of. Okay, that dark part of big pharma is 80, 90 years ago. They raised these viruses in labs using eggs as the virus's food. That's how it's done.
Okay.
So you got your fibromyalgia, you got your autoimmune diagnosis, you got your chronic fatigue syndrome, your multiple sclerosis, you got your Hashimoto's thyroiditis, your eczema, psoriasis, your rheumatoid arthritis, or whatever you got going on, your Lyme disease now, because that's an autoimmune now. You got all these things.
From eggs?
No, well, the bugs that create all these illnesses were raised in labs and somehow escaped those labs 80, 90, 60 years ago. And these bugs were raised on eggs. Eggs was the food. So they took a really great survival food, right? You like eggs.
Yeah, I love them.
You love them, right? So great survival food. They're easy. You make them in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, you just fry them
protein.
up. Yeah, the protein, right? All of that. They took that food, they ruined it for us. So that's one example. Stay away from eggs.
All eggs, even if they're like your own chickens, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Look, if they're your own chickens, it's great. If they're organic, great. If they're free range, great. All of that's great. It's better, but it's still gonna feed. If you don't have a chronic symptom, you don't have a chronic illness, you feel great, nothing's going on at any level.
Eat the eggs.
Eat the eggs, and then if something comes up down the road, get rid of the eggs.
Okay,
then.
so that's number one. What's the next food we should never eat?
Dairy products.
All dairy.
Feeds viruses. It
Cheese.
feeds the bugs. Feeds the bugs.
Milk.
Goat's milk, sheep's milk, whatever you want. It feeds, kefir, it feeds the bugs.
Okay.
Yeah, milk, cheese, butter, the whole bit. So
butter?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
So get the butter out of your coffee. It's the worst thing you could do if you're sick.
Even ghee?
Yeah.
Ghee's bad.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. The thing is,
again, if you're not feeling any symptoms,
none of this stuff is really bad if you don't have any of the
symptoms.
If you're not dealing with all the pathogens everybody has. If you're not dealing with the streptococcus and the different groups of strep that everybody has in their system, and if you're not dealing with the different Epstein-Barrs and all of that, if you're not, I mean, if you're not dealing with anything, then you could probably get away with this stuff and you can eat it. Is it bad for you in other ways? Some of it could be, maybe, you know, whatever. And of course, you could always find a paid-for study that says eggs are good, or this is good, or that's, or milk. Of course, you can always find a paid-for study. But that paid-for study and everything else around it all, nobody knows why women and men and children are suffering like they are.
Gosh, I love it.
With the heart arrhythmias that are mysterious, and the heart palps, and all the different body pain and the migraines and the tingles and numbness and the tics and the spasms. Nobody knows how any of that, and the fatigue, nobody knows what's going on or causing all of that. So then, you know, hey, wait a minute, but there was a paid-for study saying that eggs are really good for me. And my doctor recommended them because it's a great protein source. Let me just eat them and then try to do my keto diet with eggs. Let me try to do this diet, maybe stay away from gluten. But in the end, and I have total respect for everybody that's trying to experiment. And you know, you'll see it on YouTube too. You'll see, like a few years ago, people being like, okay, I'm doing this, and then all of a sudden they're getting sick. Like, it's showcasing now, because we have a documented record we never had before with people with symptoms. It's showcasing things now, like on social media. We're seeing it now where someone's like, okay, I'm loving my eggs, I'm doing it for like, you know, a year or whatever, and then a year later, you know, they're getting eczema and psoriasis and they don't know why. It's like things are, we're seeing it now when we never even could see it before, because, you know, social media is showcasing this whole documentation of everything in people's lives.
Okay, so we got no eggs, no dairy. What else?
Okay, these are the basics. These are the basics. Those are the two big ones.
If you eliminate that, you should be...
Yeah, and gluten's your third basic. That's your third. Those three...
So anything that tastes good, eliminate.
Whether you want to stay animal protein, whether you want to be vegan and stay vegan and plant-based, that's what you get rid of. Whether you're, you know...
Gluten, dairy, eggs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But you're saying meat is okay, or plant-based is okay, or what's the ideal?
Well, meat, here's
what
the,
does Spirit of Compassion tell you that you should be eating?
I'm a big supporter of plant-based, huge supporter, okay?
Is Spirit of Compassion a big supporter?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Plant-based. I mean, total big supporter, okay? But I'm not anti the animal product crowd and what they're doing, because I'm not against meat either. And I think that gets the plant-based people mad at me that love me. They're like, wait a minute, he's not against him? How come he's not against him? How come he's not fighting for staying away from, you know, animal products and stuff? Because the animal products, like, say, meat, right, doesn't feed a pathogen. So it doesn't feed a pathogen. So I can't take it personally. You know, personally, I like plant-based.
Yeah.
You know, better, like on a personal level, but I have nothing against animal protein. Here's how it works. Like years ago when I used to do all the readings, you know, I worked on one-on-one individuals, 250,000 individuals for the last 35 years.
So people would come into your office, you would do a reading with them.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if I like an animal product or not. It's not about what I like. It's about what is going on inside the body. So Spirit of Compassion will be like, this person has this, so they need to get rid of this food. So this person has, say, for example, an HHV6, cytomegalovirus, or Epstein-Barr, or they got a streptococcus, and everybody's walking around with these bugs, by the way. And yeah, oh yeah, they are. It's just, it's unbelievable. And so Spirit will say, you have to remove this food. So it's not a personal thing where I have to all of a sudden pick a side.
It's just black and white.
I get it. Everybody's trying to get on somebody's team with a diet or a program that's working for them, and then they, you know, stay with it and they try it, and then they go against the other side, right? You see it. Everybody's trying to get on somebody's team. That's human nature. That's the way we are. But I can't do that. I can't get on just the plant-based team, because I know through Spirit of Compassion that meat won't feed a virus.
There you go.
Dairy will. So then I'm like, no, both sides. Well, of course, the vegans aren't going to do dairy, but both sides.
They might do gluten, yeah.
But, you know, but they may want to do dairy someday. They may want. I mean, a lot of vegans break and they go on to cheese or they go on to something. It's but if they know no, wait a minute, this feeds this. The same thing with people that are eating animal protein, stay away from dairy so you're not feeding your pathogens to keep your Hashimoto's going and to keep your fibromyalgia going and your chronic fatigue syndrome going. So it's really important. I can't take a belief system, like I can't side up with a belief system.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the three main things. Is there anything else that we should be?
And then it's about taking out the toxic heavy metals, taking out the mercury, aluminum, the copper. Yeah.
Look, is that fish or is that?
If you don't have a lot of metals, you could probably eat fish.
Right.
You could have sardines, you could have trout, you could have salmon, you could have fish. If you're not dealing with a lot of metals, but if you got symptoms and you're dealing with issues and you're suffering and you're struggling, just keep
more toxic metals in the fish.
Keep the extra metals out. Exactly. Keep them out. It's important. But getting the metals out of the body, bringing in the, if I can give tips to anybody out there, watching this podcast, it's get on the celery juice.
And why does celery juice have more benefits than water? Why does it help you cleanse the toxins, I guess?
It's herbal medicine. It's an herb. It was missed by everybody. Everybody thought it was just good for crudité, right? Or maybe throw a celery stick in somebody's smoothie or juice or something if it's kicking around. And Spirit of Compassion has taught me, going all the way since I was a child, that it's a miracle medicine.
Really?
Yeah, because it's an herbal medicine. It has power that people don't know about, just like so many other foods have power. But this one particularly, it has a sodium cluster salt. So something called sodium cluster salts, that's a pathogen killer. That's different than salt. It's different than sea salt or anything else. But it's a pathogen destroyer. It starts to break down the membrane that's around the pathogen. The virus has a sheath around it. It's cell sheath. And the sodium cluster salts in celery juice start to wear it down and break it down. And that's just one thing. I mean, celery juice binds onto byproduct that people have in their bodies. So toxins from pathogens, it binds onto it and pulls it out of their body.
Wow.
So that's just a couple of things. I mean, I could go on. I wrote a book all about it. I mean, those are just a couple of things.
Okay, so celery juice being one, what else should we be adding?
Get the heavy metal detox, the medical medium heavy metal detox smoothie in you, so you can remove the metals. So if you're somebody with eczema or psoriasis or lichen sclerosis, you're somebody, any kind of like skin problem of any kind, rosacea, vitiligo, get the metals out. Yeah.
Acne too? Or
yeah, sure, definitely. It even helps with that because streptococcus causes severe cystic acne, and that's what's behind that. And it does feed on metals too a little bit. But what happens is that you want to get the metals out. Celery juice helps to flush the metals out once you've loosened them up with the heavy metal detox smoothie. So you want the medical medium heavy metal detox smoothie to pull that stuff out. That's one example. And these are just a couple of things you can do. Get rid of your gluten, get rid of your eggs, get rid of your dairy, whatever side of the aisle you're on, whatever belief system you're
plant-based, it's okay.
You're in.
Just get rid of those things and add celery juice in the smoothie.
Yeah.
And you should be healing yourself a lot
You're
better.
moving forward.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, there's a bunch of other stuff you can do, and there's tons of information that I talk about all the time, adding to all of this, but those are some starting points if someone's just going to listen to this and then just be like, well, what do
Get started here, You want to learn about the key foods you need to eat to master your health? Make sure to watch this video right here.
Humans who eat 2 cups of mushrooms per week do not get Alzheimer's disease. And it's because
2 cups of any type of mushroom?
Any type you want.
Just go to the grocery store, get some mushrooms.